1479, Beach approach by 25 left.
25 left.
August 24th, 2001. 306 people are flying high above the Atlantic. Suddenly, both engines cut out. The Airbus A330 is now a 400-ton glider. No fuel, no power, and no room for error. This is the unbelievable story of Flight 236.
Air Transat Flight 236 was a routine transatlantic journey from Toronto, Canada, to Lisbon, Portugal. At the controls were Captain Robert Pichet, a veteran pilot with over 16,000 flight hours, and First Officer Dirk de Jager. At 0052 UTC, the aircraft departed Toronto. On board were 293 passengers and 13 crew members. Everything was routine, until it wasn't. Unknown to the crew, a small overlooked error had already set a disaster in motion. A fuel line on engine 2 had been incorrectly installed during maintenance. It would slowly begin leaking fuel into the atmosphere. By the time the aircraft crossed the Atlantic halfway point, also called the point of no return, the right engine was hemorrhaging fuel at an alarming rate. But inside the cockpit, there were no clear signs. Not yet. At 0503 UTC, the crew noticed a fuel imbalance between the left and right tanks. Following Airbus procedures, they began cross-feeding fuel, essentially sharing it between tanks. But this move only made things worse. Fuel from the healthy engine's tank was now flowing into the leaking line and out into the sky. By 0545 UTC, the aircraft had lost thousands of kilograms of fuel. They declared a fuel emergency and requested diversion to Lajes Air Base, a military airstrip in the Azores, still over 100 miles away. At 0613 UTC, Engine 2 failed. 4 minutes later, Engine 1 went dark. The cockpit went silent except for alarms. The massive Airbus was now gliding powerless at 33,000 feet. Total fuel exhaustion in the middle of the Atlantic. Captain Pichet, a former Bush pilot with gliding experience, took over the controls. There was no thrust, no hydraulics, no room for mistakes. At this altitude, the A330 could glide roughly 15 to 20 minutes, covering about 120 kilometers. But Lajes Air Base was 120 kilometers away. It would come down to every inch of altitude. With no engines, electrical systems switched to emergency power. The crew executed a series of expertly timed maneuvers to maintain airspeed and altitude. As the runway came into sight, Pichet faced one final obstacle: landing a 400-ton jet with no thrust and no chance for a second attempt. At 0645 UTC, after gliding 75 miles without power, Flight 236 touched down hard at Lajes Air Base. The tires burst, sparks flew, but our aircraft stayed on the runway. All 306 souls on board, every single one, survived. The incident became one of the most remarkable feats in aviation history. The cause? An improperly installed hydraulic line that rubbed a hole in the fuel pipe, leaking thousands of liters. Captain Pichet and First Officer de Jager were awarded for extraordinary airmanship. And the Airbus A330? It went down in history for pulling off one of the longest engine-out glides ever recorded. No engines, no fuel, no panic. Just pure skill, calm under pressure, and a bit of luck. Flight 236 is not just a story of failure. It's a lesson in survival at 39,000 feet. Subscribe for more incredible stories. This is Urban Mavericks, signing off.